Welcome to Real Chat with Kat, the podcast that's all about real conversations for real transformation. I'm your host, Kat Polsinelli, professional speaker, MC, and best-selling international author. Here, we tackle the tough stuff, the mud that we all have found ourselves in. We talk about the pivots, the challenges, and the victories that shape our lives and our businesses. From overcoming trauma and finding your voice to navigating life's unexpected twists, we get raw, honest, and open. You'll hear from inspiring guests who share their stories of resilience, healing, and growth. Whether it's breaking through emotional abuse, embracing self-worth, or thriving in entrepreneurship, you'll find connection, empowerment, and the tools to keep you moving forward. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and get ready for stories that hit home and conversations that make a difference. Let's get real together. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of Real Chat with Kat. Always a blessing and so excited to have you here and joining us today. And I am super excited to be able to bring you guys back an amazing guest. Back to the podcast. If you guys listened to Karen's part one, shared a beautiful story of her past and the strength and courage that she showed. And I'm super excited to be able to dive in even deeper today on trauma and just the things and how it relates to us, it affects us at every age. And some of the beautiful things that Karen is doing behind the scenes and has done, and the research and things that have really helped transform not only her life, but the people around her as well. So Karen, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much, part two. Even though we've had a nice little bit of giddy energy already before we started recording, but it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous to be in your company, your beautiful company. Thank you for having me, and hello to all the beautiful viewers and listeners as well. Hi.
Yes. Everybody knows, things happen before you start recording, right? That's called life. So I'm giggly. So before we jump in then, Karen, will you do us all a favor for anyone maybe that has missed part one and needs to go back and listen to it? Tell everybody who you are and what it is that you do, and then we'll dive in.
Thank you, darling. So right now I'm in Ireland. I'm at home. I'm Irish. I live in the southeast of Ireland. Some people might know it for we would have manufactured water for Crystal. So in terms of Your Beautiful Land, the Millennium Ball in Times Square was one of our production pieces made here in Waterford in Water for Crystal. I'm a mom of two. I have a beautiful 28-year-old son that's all the way in Australia. Adore him. He's off living his path, his life. So I'm watching that from afar. And I have a beautiful 20-year-old daughter becoming 21. She is in university in her second year doing zoology. So I'm a very content, happy mammy in that respect. I love the beautiful souls that they've turned into, and I love the path that they're on and the life they're allowing themselves to have. My background is I'm happily married. Oh, I better say that. Bypass the husband there, because before we press record, I just gave out. So, hello, beautiful husband. Yes, I'm beautifully, happily married, and we work together, me and my husband. So, we've married and we merge our talents and our gifts together. So, the background to what it is, I'm the founder of SOULution Therapy, play on words, the soul, SOUL, SOULution Therapy, and my husband works with me in this industry. Our work together. So, Jeff is an incredible background, is in engineering, and he was a master welder, a senior global lecturer. So he got to travel and lecture a lot. And then he had his own encounter with awakening when his son died, and that catapulted Jeff down the road of trying to make meaning out of life. And he explored and was activated in his gifts. So he's a quantum energy healer, an intuitive healer. So he's beautiful, and this is where our paths cross in the industry we work in. Jeff is a dowser, a ley line dowser. So he tracks the ley lines of the land. He also tracks the energy in the body. So he dowses to see what life encounters or experiences are still in your body that are disrupting the energy. Because when energy doesn't break down and it doesn't move, it becomes stagnated, and the last place you'll feel it is physically in the body. So he does that, and then my work is I've been a psychotherapist 20 years. I'm a licensed accredited psychotherapist. And I also then weaved in other modalities that I fell in love with. So I trained in Tantra as a Tantra teacher. I trained in living inquiry, self inquiry work. People know it under Dr. Gaber Mate as compassion inquiry. I also trained as a shamanic medicine woman. And I just weave because I'm naturally an intuitive when it comes to being with people in the work. So I just weave all of those beautiful, beautiful modalities that just allows me to really go into a deep, deep journey. So I work very deeply. It could be to also to do if we look at my astrology chart, I am a cusp, I am a Libra, and I'm a Scorpio. So I am unafraid of the dark night of the soul. God bless everybody and me. So I've gone deep and I've studied the darkness from a very young age. We know this from part one when I shared in
Mhm.
my story. So I'm unafraid of the darker aspects of what comes up in humanity. I've gone there, I've lived through so much horrors, you could say, and horrific encounters. So I sit very, very in a space where I hold great space for what needs to be known, whether that's through trauma for the other person. And, I weave that together, whether that's through ceremonial work as a shaman. Um, and ultimately, I would say all of the modalities I work with, the primary goal of that is really it's allow all of us when I work with people to find the safety within their own physical body, because a lot of people would know this. When we have emotional pain, we feel that as a discomfort in our body, and a lot of people run up into the head and become overthinkers because it's too much emotionally in the body. And my role and my capacity is I hold wonderful, beautiful, in a fun, loving way too, just space where people feel so at home around me because of that real. I work in that place of just being real. And a lot of people would have said that over the years, like, you're just so fucking ordinary. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And I really saw the importance of that when I used to do deep suicide work. I used to work with teenagers in an agency, a charity agency in Ireland called Pieta, which was for teenagers who were self-harming and at risk of suicide. And I would just get on the floor and they would say to me, "You would not think you're a therapist." And I said, a therapist's just a label. I'm a human being who really has gone through a lot of pain. And I feel, I can see, I know your pain, so I know how to navigate it with you. So I work in that place of deep relational work with the aim of just getting people so back in their bodies where they can find the safety of themselves in here. Because without connection to self, this world that we have to navigate becomes too much. So my job, and you mentioned the word, all the stuff that I've done, like a research, my job was to really look at the relationship with herself. And I did that through the spiritual lens of self-love. Um, because I had saturated so much self hate onto Karen. So my connection to self really matters. And then I really work on that in such deep, beautiful, gorgeous ways with people for them to absolutely anchor that in with themselves. So that's kind of the background of what I do. Yeah, for those who didn't hear it first time around. Yeah.
Yes. And definitely go check out part one. Karen opens up and shares a beautiful story of something deep and personal that she's been through and how she chose to walk through that. And it was wonderful to be a part of and to listen to. And I think that so many people are going to resonate with it as well. And
Mm.
I love that, you talk about therapy being a label, because I do think that we get caught up in those labels, and I think that keeps us away from dealing with people or working with people and things like that. And I think that there's a beautiful space that I've met so many people in the therapy world that fall in this like in between of, yes, this is the knowledge, this is the background that I carry, and I've expanded it 10 times in a different direction to be able to ultimately give you, right, all these options, a 360 view. And I do think that having your own personal pain, and it sounds terrible to people that are listening to this, but it's the truth. When you have people that are able to sit in that space with you because they have been through anything that is similar or that has been traumatic, there is this unknowing bond and understanding that I believe that is created, which even for myself was very different than sitting in a generic therapist office and trying to tell them what I'd been through and knowing that what I was saying was not connecting because they
Mm-hmm.
had not experienced it, right? I think that a lot of us are looking for that connection, that understanding, to know we're not alone, to know we're not crazy, right? And it's beautiful that you're able to sit with people so deeply and be able to hold that space because we need more people like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the world right now is just, it's I suppose shamanically, we work with that saying, as within, as without, so above, so below. And, you only have to look at all of those saturated stories that are carrying weight at the moment out there on social media, on the news, and we can see the disturbances of what exists out there. And I am a sincere advocate of, because I have like been so exposed to trauma from a young age, and I know the impact that trauma will have on us when we self-hate. I know the toxicity of that poison in the body and in the mind when there's so much after happening onto a person and you have so much violence inside of yourself with your own emotions. That then becomes the, if just to lighten the language, that becomes the energy then you project into the world. And it's also the way in which you're looking into the world. So you will be looking into the world and only seeing the things in the world that is not okay. You will also be feeling that the world is not okay, and everything then will activate you in ways in which you feel not okay. And I'm saying it in a very simplified way, um just not to saturate the understanding of that, because there's so many ways that you can talk about that. I can talk about it from the
Mm-hmm.
psychological lens, but I'm just going to keep it kind of in this frame right now, um because it feels right for me to say it that way. um so, and I have been that person when I was so broken by what another person had done unto me, and I was so broken inside, and I hated Karen so much. The world got a lot of my violence and my rage.
Mm-hmm.
um and of course, where else was it meant to go? If you are this, our physical body, if you think of it like a vessel, a container, it hosts and holds within it all of the stuff, the emotional, the mental, all of that inside. And I had so much, if I put a color on it, I had so much darkness in me. My mindset was so dark because I had so much hate. And I didn't realize that I had so much hate for Karen. I acted like I hated Karen, but you would think I just hated everybody. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
always in a fight. I was always argumentative. I was so defensive. Um, but my defensiveness repelled everybody. So it kept on, bringing into my experience me not feeling wanted or loved. Of course, people found it impossible to love and want me. I was this violent person who would argue with you on what you said, who would, talk to you in such a very crude and cruel way because I just didn't care. And I think I said it in part one. I walked around with a mudra, which was my middle fingers were like this to the world. And I had so much hatred and violence towards myself, but it was experienced towards others. And I self-sabotaged. So I destroyed everything because I couldn't allow myself to believe I was worthy to receive anything nice, loving, wholesome. So and then all relationships I got into just mirrored that. I always got into a relationship with somebody, and I'll just say it this way, of the same vibrational number calibration. So let's say I'm self-hating at a 2. I always got with somebody who was even a 1 or a 3 who also self-hated them. So there's the trauma bonding, they call that in the
Mm-hmm.
psychology world. So there's your trauma bonding, and you're locked into that, and that's going to just keep on feeding in you the same familiar experience that you're having. So for a constant 15 years, I was trapped in a very familiar hell, and my hell looked like pain, self-harm, self-rejection, like so much self-violence that I did share as well, that I attempted suicide when I was only 15. That's how much violence there was in me. And suicidal energy is, the need to kill, but you can't externalize that, because I wanted to kill the person who had abused me so badly. So instead I ended up wanting to kill Karen. That's a way of me to explain that to you. So if you're going around with that, and what can happen then is, if you don't sit in a chair and you don't do the self looking and the self exploration, you will find ways to numb and disassociate, we call it, and disconnect from all of that discomfort, and ways in which people can do that, because you're going to find ways to navigate this world while you have so much pain in you. That is a truth. You have both the wound and, as I say, the medicine energy. So you will still navigate even though you have a lot of pain. And then what we see, and we see it everywhere, we see, there's pockets of people who are homeless. There are pockets of people who are on drugs, drug misuse. There are pockets of people who are unfortunately trapped inside of abusive relationships, and they're not able to access the very care and support for themselves that they truly deserve, because they truly believe they're unworthy and they're not good enough. And what's the point? I don't deserve. So you can numb that then, and people have numbed it through alcohol. If you look at Gabriel Mate's whole conversation on drug misuse, he will absolutely articulate with great beauty and wisdom that drug addiction is a symptom of trauma, unresolved trauma and pain. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say under that, it's unhealed self-hate. There's no self-love. So if we don't, or if we do find a way to pacify it, and we're functional in this world, but barely, but we do have, shadow, we call that the shadow work. You hear that a lot, all these late, we call them theory frames. Oh, you need to do
Mm-hmm.
your shadow work. Your shadow, the shadow part of you is the part in you can't integrate in yourself. So you do energetically split it off, and then you see it in other people and things, and they are the very people and things that bother you a lot. That is the shadow energy showing up, mirroring itself to you. So if you have all this, pain and black energy in you, and you don't know how to handle it, but you put a lid on it. Okay, you've suppressed it enough to function and move forward, on your path, get married, get a decent job. But there's always going to be this, as I would call it spiritually, this God-shaped hole in you that only God can fill. What does that even mean? We are a creator. We've been created by the divine. Call him your artist, call him God, call it the sacred intelligence, whatever resonates for your heart. But you were created by this incredible artistic creator who, when created you, did not make a mistake. You were brought in from a divine sacred place of love, and you are looked at through that lens of love. So you came in as this incredible energy. You're not going to have any access to the wisdom of knowing that within yourself. So when you don't know that within yourself, and you end up hating you, there is that God-shaped hole that only God can fill. In other words, there is that divine hole in you, because you are also the divinity in formation, that only you can fill for yourself if you get to know you, if you turn inwardly and you start to do the work and repair with that relationship with yourself. And I say it with teenagers when they come to me into therapy. I say to them, if I was to tie you up for the day with somebody you really hated, how would that make you feel? And they're well able to articulate it. They go, oh, I'd be
Mm-hmm.
so uncomfortable. I'd be trying to distract myself. I wouldn't like it at all. I'd be angry and annoyed. And I said, well, you are tied up with somebody you absolutely hate because you scored yourself out of self-love at a 4. So I know you don't like who you are, and you are in a relationship with a self that you cannot disconnect from. You were born to be this version. This is your soul energy. So if you're hating on that, I know you're unhappy walking around. I know you're not okay inside of yourself at a deeper level. And I know this. So that metaphor allows people to kind of become more aware of, well, that would make sense. If I was tied up to somebody I hated, I would be miserable. Oh gosh, that is me I'm tied up to. Oh gosh, I am very unhappy. And I thought by buying myself, the material objects, or chasing down the ideal career, or seeking after the things that I see other people have on social media, that I would be satisfied. But even when I do go and manifest those things for myself, after a little while, I'm still left feeling untouched. That part of me is not satisfied. And I'm like, of course, because it is the God-shaped hole that only God can fill. In other words, connection to self and love of self is the only thing that's going to fill that in you. And it takes a while for people to recognize then the relevance and the importance of self-love, and not that I feel it's been appropriated out there. Self-love is, you go and get a mask, you get a massage.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they're self-care practices, but that's not the self-love I'm speaking to. I'm speaking to a psychological, a spiritual, an emotional dynamic with yourself that repairs in you the very things in you that were taken from you and left you with pain. But actually, God, when God created you and created you for your magnificence, also created in you your own medicine to be able to heal inside of yourself the very wound that you walk around with. You don't need that from people. A lot of time when people get hurt, they believe if they just chase down the very person, or
Mm-hmm.
whether it's get revenge or vengeance, and that's another, it doesn't have to be revenge or vengeance, but they remain looking at the wound, and they don't recognize the part of them that is so fucking extraordinarily vast and capable and brilliant and beautiful, that is so there for them to touch into and call upon and pull out of themselves into their world and into their pain and suffering for healing. So right now, I feel when I look at the world energetically, it's like all of that unconscious dark energy that's in the psyche, because what's in one person, that's what the collective is known as. I went through pain. You know what pain is, Kat, and I'm sure your listeners know what pain is. And we all have a way of responding to pain. Now that's the collective right there. So as a collective, we all go through the same thing. Your country is a psyche in itself because it's made up of a collective of other people's mindsets. So it's one, if you think of it that way, it's one big mindset. It's one big psyche. And right now, what we're witnessing is the darker part of that psyche is now being exposed. So what's really been called upon for your nation and land is incredible collective healing. Incredible collective healing. Because if I heal in me singularly and understand spiritually that I'm connected to all and everyone, if I begin the work on me and start to work on myself and heal it within me, then naturally that's going to have a domino ripple effect. You know the story of the 12 monkeys. One monkey learned the behavior. Within a few minutes, 12 monkeys knew that behavior. Within a day, it had traveled around the world. Other monkeys that weren't even in contact all knew the same behavior. There's the collective energy. So right now, it's like, the amazingness of all of this is so incredibly breathtaking, to recognize that although we look at it and it looks like chaos and it's terrifying and it's overwhelming, that there is actually this aware wisdom of realization that actually within my own self, I have the capacity to do work on me that will actually also contribute to the benefit of the collective whole that I'm seeing that's going on out there. So my love for people, as I always say to people, don't get lost with what is going on out there. Let that be an indicator of what could you do within yourself that you could cleanse on. And the Hawaiian people knew this with that Ho'oponopono prayer. I mean, incredible people. They knew that to chant on the program of violence. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. They knew by chanting this incredible, what they call, God's prayer almost, the divine prayer. It cleanses the program, the energy of violence. They knew by just chanting, seeing violence as the energy, see it even existing in somebody you might know, but constantly cleansing on that like a prayer, like an intention of prayer. It would cleanse the energy and soften out the energy. And we know this because Dr. Whelan spoke about it by working in the asylum. He healed the people in the criminally insane, high secure asylum. Nobody could keep the workers working there. Nobody could find a psychiatrist to work with them. He took the job on. He said, I won't be meeting the patients. And they were like, what? And he was like, no, I won't be meeting them, but I'll do the job. He did the job, and within 3 years, the asylum closed down and all the inmates were rehabilitated back out into the community, all
Mm.
resolved in their violence and their programming. And when he was interviewed, and his interviews on YouTube, I'd recommend people look it up. World psychologists wanted to understand, well, if you didn't sit with your patients, how did this happen?
Yeah.
And he shared about the Ho'oponopono. And and I love it because he's speaking about quantum energy. He's speaking about just because we can't see it does not mean it cannot happen. And he spoke about how he would sit and look at their file and read it, and he would cleanse on the murderer program, the violent program, the hate program in each patient. Every day, for the 5 days he was there per week, he would clean, as they call it. It's a cleansing prayer. And that person became less violent, less agitated, more softer. And the staff started to be able to work with their inmates a lot better. And then they were able to start have in-house community projects. They started to paint the asylum, do garden work, and then they became integrated into community. And it closed down because they had no more inpatients. And it's, I feel it's relevant to where I went off in the conversation based on your question. It's like, and because I had shared, I was only recently in New York and I could feel hopelessness. I'm sharing it because I want to offer something that might sound a little bit out there. It doesn't matter what it sounds like. I can just say, in the heart of my heart, I have sat with so much ugly energies from when I was a child, through my abuser and the terror. And I know what it's like to genuinely take self accountability and responsibility, do the work, the inner work, and heal and clean and clear my own pains and traumas, so that those who come into contact with me, they only ever meet compassion in me. Like, and I know this saying, that saying, you wouldn't hurt a fly if you were conscious. And that's true. I used to, God forgive me, I used to kill flies when I was younger, get them out of the house. Now I would absolutely get upset. I would open the window and I'd have to rescue them because I can almost relate to their struggle of trying to get out the window. So I understand that you wouldn't hurt a fly if you were conscious. And that's what I feel humanity and doing the inner work is calling on us now to do more than ever, is
Mhm.
look at yourself, do that work with yourself. And I'm only sharing at the bigger, grand scale level of what are actual possibilities when we take responsibility for our own self first. And then others come together in communities to do that as well, with that intention of healing and uplifting humanity by being in service back. Look at the ripple effect that will have. So yeah, that was very present in my heart to share.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Karen. I think that we're definitely in a space where people are seeking something different. And I just think that a lot of us are lost because there is so much that's in the world, that's on social media, that is misconstrued, that is pushed in a different direction, that's become trendy words, trendy vibes, and people feel really lost.
Yeah.
And I do believe that coming back to self is definitely the place that we need to start. When you and I've talked about this, and I share this on the podcast all the time. Being in an abusive situation, I knew before then what it was like to have a great life, to be happy about the trees around me and the plants. And, I remember that portion of my life. And then I do remember the dark. And I remember that being with me even years after coming out of that situation, and then making the choice to want to feel differently and to act differently, because I couldn't continue in the cycle like you were talking about earlier, because it wasn't serving me. And it's really interesting. When we talk about the spaces of energy and things like that, I know a lot of people like that so woo woo. I really challenge you to look into it, because we're more energetically connected than you understand, and that I think that we understand to a capacity. But there have been studies for decades on energy. Albert Einstein talked about energy. Nikola Tesla talked about energy. Like, there is a lot more than we give credit to on the realm of the connections and the energy, and how it creates spaces around us. So it's just a beautiful message. I appreciate you sharing that. I think that there are going to be so many people that resonate with that. I hope that if you felt that in your heart, that is your moment to sit with and to think about and to really feel into that maybe something is calling you forward in regards to that. What was the name of the gentleman from the prison? I want to make sure people can hear it, and then we'll get the link and make sure we put it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, his name was Dr. Whelan.
Okay,
Yeah, and I'll send that over to you, Kath, as well, so you can drop it into the notes.
perfect.
And there is a beautiful interview on him explaining this in a beautiful way on YouTube, and he is being interviewed by these top psychologists who really just wanted to, they weren't being like cynical
Mm-hmm.
or judging, which I love. I love you can show up into spaces with cynicism. And
Mm-hmm.
and for me, when a person does that, I compassionately just know that they're holding on to their frame of reference, because it gives them a sense of feeling in control and feeling empowered. So like they showed up with this really beautiful energy of curiosity, because I love curiosity, because curiosity is that invitation to allow yourself to step outside of that terrain, that familiar knowing of what you
Yeah.
know, and make space for other informations to come in, and to marinate in it, and then allow what's in that to stick with you. But the thing about it that is so beautiful in the interview is, by watching it, you just have a knowing he's telling the truth, because he's so pure. And this is the beauty of energy. We hear that phrase, vibes don't lie. When a person is telling the truth, we can feel it in the sensory energy of our body. And I know we were told, you have five senses, but we were also brought up in an institutional energy of a schooling that really only worked with certain levels of intelligence. So we've more intelligence than we can comprehend. We've got
Mm-hmm.
kinesthetic intelligence, we've got artistic intelligence. It's not just academic brain, but we have, for some reason, come at this world through the mental energy, and bypassed a lot of other capacities that we're capable of doing. I've just been very like fortunate, you could say, that in my life when I was, and I think I shared it in part one, when I was an au pair in France, my au pair mother was a healer, and like I witnessed her do things with her hands. Like one of them small was putting her hands on her cat and saying to her husband, we have to go to the vet. The cat has liver cancer in the liver. She's not going to make it for the rest of the week. Like, how would she know that? She didn't have an x-ray machine. She didn't do blood work. She got her cat to the vet. He confirmed it. When I crashed on the scooter and I cracked ribs and broke my baby finger, she worked on me. And she was highly sought after in France, because the people in the little town called Divan in Gex, they knew of her. She was trained as a cranial therapist and an osteopath, but they all knew of her gift. In Ireland, this is not uncommon. We would have had healers, even when I was growing up, that you would take your child to if they had finger warts, that would heal you, and you would take the waters from the holy well. We have holy wells here in Ireland. And, they do a little blessing on you, and you'd wake up and your finger warts would have fallen off. So for me, I have great curiosity. I come from a land that is so ancient. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
ancient. We've civilizations that go as far back as the Bronze Age. That's thousands of years old. We had druids here. We had, the energy of, we call the fairies and the leprechauns. We understand that as they were the fae people who literally just went under the veil because other humans came, and they left this realm and they go what they call under the veil. So when we do Halloween in Ireland, it's the time of the year when the veil is very thin, where you can feel into the other dimensions of your loved ones who've crossed over and of the fae people. So we know all of that. And that's why in Ireland you dressed up in Halloween costumes. So the pukas, as Gaeilge in Irish, the ghosts did not know that you weren't a human. They thought you were a ghost. That's why our kids dressed up as ghosts. So, there's a lot of ways of being, and sometimes the wisdom can seep through, old wives' tales when they would say things, and you'd be like, that's far fetched, but yet there was wisdom in it and there was truth behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And you could link it back historically to where that came from, and what that meant, So like there's so much, I feel, that we can have a choice. We can keep the door closed, stay in our familiar space, be comfortable with where we're at, or we can open up the door and become very curious and recognize that the world around us aren't objects. A tree is not an object. The ocean is not an object. We know this. They now tell us. Emoto did it with water. He put water into 3 glasses. He spoke violently to one. He spoke full of love to the other. He took a camera, took a picture, looked at the molecule structure of the water, and the one he spoke lovingly to, it was like snowflakes. The one he spoke violent to took on the shape of cancer. Water is highly conscious. You put a glass of water down on a picture, it takes on the image of that picture. You put a letter, a word on the glass, it takes in the language as well. So water is highly conscious. So we are living in a world that is alive in its energy. But it's really, and my job when I work with people, it's never to penetrate the teachings that I know and have, but it's always about expanding people into more expansion and higher ways of being. Because I
Mm-hmm.
know what's more beautiful is if I'm in this world and I'm looking at a tree and I'm in awe with wonder, knowing that that tree, and they proved it scientifically, can feel. They take care of other trees, so they're relational. They send water to other trees. They can see you, but they've no physical eyes. That plants, if you're loving to your plants, that plants can feel you arriving home even at 7 mile radius out. They can pick up on your energy. So if you sit in this world and you recognize and start to realize everything is alive and it's open for a relationship, you can only come into that realization and that wisdom and that encountering, in other words, an embodied encountering of that, when you have sat with yourself and begun the inner healing work. When you're not healed, because I know that and I can talk from that place of not being healed, everything looks like just a thing. And we
Mm-hmm.
call that itifying, where you itify it. It's only that. Sure, what's the point? That doesn't matter. That's, and you project then all of what's in you onto it because it's a thing. When you do the inner work and you begin to really understand that it's not things, it's other, if you want to call it, energies, beings in different costumes, having a different shape, but can sense, is sending out energy to communicate. Now you're in the I thou relationship. You are now having a God to God encountering. because you're understanding that the magnificent energy that created you also created everything around you, and it is in partnership with you. And then
Mm.
there's a difference. So when I walk into water in the ocean here in Ireland to go swimming, I meet the ocean by saying hello to it and asking for it to emotionally, because water holds the energy of emotion. I ask for it to cleanse in me the emotion I might have upset in me on that morning. And I'll go in there crying and just put my head under the water and just give myself to be held by the sacredness of water. In my pain, I would have looked at water and I would have genuinely dumped things on the ground by water, rubbish, because I saw it as a thing. So the invitation in what I'm speaking to and sharing is that, you know, you can choose your frame of reference. You can choose within you how you want to be in this world and how you want to look out on this world. But if you begin to fall in love with the energy of who you are and become in awe of the fact that you even exist, of the fact that what's up in those planets, the minerals and the irons up in those planets are actually the same minerals and irons in your own body. They've now proven that too. So you have the cosmos inside of you. You are connected to everything around you. I promise you, this world, you will transcend the ugliness of what is in this world around you. And people like Viktor Franklin are fabulous evidence of that, of how a human being can be trapped in the most horrific of conditions, but he can find the beauty in the most ugliest of things, and he's survived. So it's
Mm.
an invitation to initiate yourself into a bigger purpose for your own selfhood, to fall in love with the vibration of what you are, and to recognize that you're on a very beautiful and very alive planet. And you can either fall in love with yourself to fall in love with it and have a wonderment of an experience on this earth, or you can just shut down and believe in what you want to believe in. But actually, you're the one who's going to be walking around with that in you and those feelings in you and that God shaped hole in you. And I just don't want that for people. I always want to see people filled up. That God shaped hole is full, their heart is wide open, and they're having these beautiful awe and wonder encounters with life, despite what's going on out there, they're still able
Yeah.
to find that within themselves. Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, it's so beautifully put. I don't even have anything to add.
that's okay.
But being able to see both sides, like it really, it makes so much sense. And I know for some people listening, you might be thinking that I'm so confused. But it's a process, it's a journey, and if we're willing to lean into it, it will all, make sense. And we'll make sure that obviously we'll put the information about the YouTube session that's in there for anyone that is curious what she's talking about. For Viktor Frankl, it is a book called Man's Search for Meaning. He was in Auschwitz, and
Yeah.
he speaks on his story and kind of his psychology behind it and understanding and why he saw things. It's a beautiful book. Funny enough, I'm pretty halfway through it. I've been thinking about reading this book forever. So anyway, it's been wonderful so far. So to anyone that feels called to connect with you, Karen, how can they find you?
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. And you're right, there is a lot on it. So just to clarify that, I gave you one side, which is when we're in pain, and then I jumped over to when you've done the inner work and the place that's waiting for you. And it takes great courage. So I just want to say to anybody who is currently doing the inner work, well done, because it's not fucking easy. Because you do have to
Mm-hmm.
face all of that energy inside of yourself, but it is so worth it. It's like
Absolutely.
gardening, attending to a garden. So it's so worth it. So congratulations for those. For those who hear this and they're like, what is going on? It's okay. You're not meant to know what am I on about, but something in you is popping its little ear up because you're sitting here and you're hearing this. So in psychotherapy, we call it the higher self in its theory. So the higher self in you already knows this, so That's okay too. It will land where it's meant to land so beautifully. So you're correct in
Mhm.
saying that. Where people can find me, I do hang out more, as I said before, on Instagram. I'm useless on social media, but I am there on Instagram, and I'm there as the SOULution Therapist. And absolutely come over. And once you join that page, you'll see I have another page, which is Trauma and the Sacred. That's another page I've set up because I'm speaking in Oxford at a trauma conference in September, which is a big conference, yeah, with Dr. Gabriel Mate and a few other brilliant, gorgeous souls. So
Mm.
come, connect, say hi, any question from this talk, you're so welcome, to reach out. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, Karen, I just love speaking to you. You are just phenomenal. Thank you so much again for coming on a second time and sharing all of your wisdom and deep thought and really speaking to the inner part of us that I feel so many are being called to listen to. I hope that this gives them a space to hear that a little bit more today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you
Yeah.
to your listeners. Everyone have a great day wherever you are. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes. And of course, we'll make sure we have all that information in the show notes. We'll make it super easy for you to follow and find Karen as well. And definitely take a look at that YouTube video that she's talked about. I'm going to find it. And I hope that something within you today really felt called. Like Karen said, maybe it's that little ear that came out that something piqued its interest, even if you don't understand it. Lean into it. That's the first step, is getting curious, as we were talking about earlier, to decide if something that you can do differently. So be blessed until next time. Do one thing positive for someone each and every day and see the difference that it makes in your life. Catch you later.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Real Chat with Kat today, where real stories meet real solutions. If you love today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review on Apple, and share this with someone who may also need to hear this as well. Let's also keep the conversation going. Follow me on socials at The Lotus Effect, connect with our incredible guests, and remember, you are never alone. Your story matters, and you have the ability and the power to rewrite it. You always have a choice. Until next time, stay strong, stay inspired, and keep showing up as the incredible, unstoppable